I want you to imagine, just for a second, what happens the morning after a massive political revolution.
Right, the big day.
Yeah, exactly. The votes have finally been counted. The old regime that everyone was just so desperate to get rid of is officially out, and citizens are literally celebrating in the streets.
There are new flags flying everywhere.
Yeah. But then Monday morning rolls around,
Yeah.
and you realize that the people taking over the administration of your local neighborhood, well, they're the exact same corrupt operators who were making your life miserable last week.
Oh, man. Yeah.
They're just wearing new party colors.
It is a profoundly demoralizing scenario for any voter, You wake up expecting this brand new era, and instead you find the old machinery of control has just been handed over to a new set of managers.
Right.
Or worse, the exact same managers who simply swapped out their lapel pins overnight.
Right. And that tension, that massive gap between winning an election and actually changing how a society is run, that is exactly what we are unpacking in today's deep dive.
It's such a critical topic.
It really is. So we're looking at a fascinating policy paper addressed to the BJP. It's essentially a blueprint regarding their first major test of democratic administration in West Bengal following a transition of power from the TMC.
Right, looking at the actual ground game.
Exactly. We're going to explore the actual mechanics of political extortion and, more importantly, how a government actually goes about dismantling an entrenched, deeply toxic political culture.
It's tall order.
It's a huge order. But first, before we get into the weeds, I need to say something important to you, our listener. Now, because our source material today deals with real-world political parties, specifically the BJP, PMC, and CPM in India, we need to be incredibly clear. We are not taking any political sides here. We aren't endorsing the viewpoints of the left or the right. Our job today is simply to impartially report on the ideas, warnings, and policy frameworks contained right here in the source document you shared with us.
Yeah, we are treating this document purely as an analytical case study in governance. And what's fascinating here is that this paper, it isn't a victory lap or a celebration strategy. It's actually a stark warning.
Right.
The author provides this highly detailed, step-by-step blueprint designed to prevent a political victory from instantly turning into a democratic failure.
Wow.
Yeah, it outlines the specific mechanisms a party must use to police its own ranks, like the very moment it takes power.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because, to understand how to fix a corrupt system, the source says we first have to look at the history of how this cycle just keeps repeating itself in West Bengal.
Right. The historical context provided in the text is really the foundational starting point.
So where does it start?
Well, the paper points out that West Bengal citizens previously voted out the CPM, the left front, with this immense hope of liberation.
They wanted a clean slate.
Exactly. The public wanted an end to a system that was heavily controlled by party cadres on every street corner.
Right.
But many citizens found that the old cadre-controlled system was simply replaced by a new, equally restrictive cadre-controlled system under the TMC.
Oh, wow.
The faces changed, but the restrictive architecture of local control remained almost identical.
This sounds exactly like a hostile corporate takeover.
Huh? How do you mean?
Well, the CEO gets fired, the company gets a shiny new logo and a new mission statement in the lobby, right?
Right.
But the toxic middle management just switches their email signatures and keeps bullying the staff.
That is exactly what happens.
So if voters are desperately demanding a change in culture, why do new political parties let these opportunistic bullies into their ranks in the first place? Why not just clean house entirely and hire new people?
It's a good question, but building a massive political apparatus across thousands of villages and neighborhoods requires vast amounts of manpower.
Right.
And unfortunately, local operators are very often power seekers rather than ideological workers.
They just want to be in charge.
Exactly. The text notes that these individuals are experts at sensing a shift in the wind. They change their colors before, during, or right after an election.
Right.
But changing political colors doesn't change their political hunger.
Oh, that's a great phrase.
The person who is extracting resources from citizens under one flag is more than happy to do it under a new flag, provided the new party gives them shelter and local authority.
So the true test for any incoming administration is whether it can actually build a firewall, right, to stop these shape-shifting cadres from bringing their old predatory habits into the new regime.
That's the challenge. Yeah.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of that predation. Now that we know who is driving this cycle of corruption, we need to look at exactly how this extortion machine operates on the street level.
Right.
And the source uses two very specific terms that we need to define for you. Tolabaji and dadagiri.
Yeah, let's start with Tolabaji.
Yep.
The text defines this not as, like, petty theft, but as a highly organized system of political extraction.
It's systemic.
Completely. We are talking about an entire shadow economy run by political workers. This includes forcing businesses to pay protection money, demanding illegal commissions to approve local projects, and extracting what is locally known as cut money.
We should probably clarify what cut money actually means here because it's a very specific mechanism.
Go for it.
It's basically when government funds or welfare schemes are supposed to go directly to citizens, right?
Huh.
But the local political operators skim a percentage off the top just for allowing the transaction to happen.
Exactly. And beyond just skimming cash, Tolabaji involves forcing businesses to hand over lucrative subcontracts to party loyalists.
Wait, how does that work?
Well, say you are building a road. You are forced to buy the bricks from the local politician's cousin at an inflated price.
Wow.
Yeah, the party worker acts as an unavoidable political gatekeeper to the local economy.
And that economic control feeds directly into the cultural side of things, which the source calls dadagiri.
Right, dadagiri. This describes the culture where local political identity transforms into sheer social authority.
So they become the boss.
Exactly. The local party worker suddenly elevates into a broker, a coercer, and an informal authority figure in the neighborhood.
Right.
They teach the citizens a very dark lesson. Having legal rights written on a piece of paper is completely useless.
Oh, that's bleak.
It is. To survive, you have to manage your relationship with the local dada, or local political boss. They become the ultimate arbiter of who gets to thrive and who gets punished.
But wait, isn't this just standard, everyday bribery?
What do you mean?
Well, greasing palms to get things done happens everywhere in the world. You pay a little extra to get your restaurant permit expedited, or you hand a little cash to the building inspector so they don't hold up your construction.
Sure, yeah.
It's terrible, but it's universally common. Why does the author treat this specific brand of extortion as an existential threat to the state?
So the author of the text firmly counters that assumption by drawing a line between transactional corruption and systemic subjugation.
Okay, break that down.
When you tip a building inspector to look the other way, that is a transactional bribe between two individuals.
Really?
Tolabaji and dadagiri, however, form a highly organized, systemic architecture that entirely subordinates the citizen to the party cadre. It completely replaces the rule of law with the rule of fear.
So it's not just a bug in the system, it is this system.
Exactly.
Like imagine you are trying to open a small transport business in your neighborhood. Before you can even put a truck on the road, the local dada demands a fee.
Right.
Then you have to hire his specific list of drivers. And if you refuse, your trucks are physically blocked from leaving the lot or notoriously vandalized.
And what makes it an existential threat is that it actively pollutes state institutions.
Yeah.
It turns access to basic government services, things your taxes already pay for, into a matter of political charity.
Unbelievable.
Crucially, it actively punishes any citizen who doesn't display explicit political loyalty. And furthermore, the paper highlights that this culture absolutely destroys the industrial sector.
Because if you are an outside investor looking at where to build a new manufacturing plant, you are calculating costs.
Right, you're looking at the bottom line.
Exactly. And if you realize your supply chain will be constantly hit with these informal taxes and political harassment, you just take your money to a different state.
You'd have to.
It signals that the environment is politically unsafe and financially unpredictable.
Yeah, because these local dadas effectively control the local economy. The businesses and citizens have nowhere to turn.
Right.
And that creates a terrifying ripple effect across the entire state, which the source breaks down into 5 specific cascading dominoes of governance risk.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Yeah, if a new administration fails to stop this extortion system, these 5 dominoes will inevitably fall.
Let's walk through those 5 dominoes because they paint a pretty terrifying picture of how quickly a government can collapse from the inside.
Yeah, the first one the paper identifies is citizen risk.
And what is that exactly?
Citizen risk represents the rapid loss of moral legitimacy. If the public wakes up a month after the election and sees the exact same arrogance, the same street-level extortion, and the same intimidation they just voted against, well, they will immediately conclude that nothing has actually changed.
So the honeymoon period is over instantly.
Instantly. The new administration loses the trust and goodwill of the people before it even begins to implement its actual policies.
Wow. Okay, and the second domino is industrial risk.
Right.
We just touched on the factory example, but the paper explicitly warns that if entrepreneurs still have to pay informal taxes just to move their goods across town, any grand promises of industrial revival will just wither and die.
It's impossible to grow an economy like that.
Exactly. You can't invite global corporations to your state if they have to negotiate with local thugs just to lay the foundation of their building.
Spot on. And the third risk is perhaps the most dangerous structural threat: police risk.
Yeah, this one stood out to me.
The source explicitly calls the political control of police stations democracy's first failure.
Wait, how does that actually play out on the ground?
It manifests as a complete breakdown in the chain of command. If local party workers have the power to walk into a police station and dictate who gets arrested and whose complaints are thrown in the trash, well, the public loses all faith in the justice system.
Wow.
The police stop serving the law and start serving the local political boss.
Right.
Like if a business owner goes to report the Tolabaji we just talked about, the police officer might actually call the extortionist to tip them off, because the officer's own job relies on keeping the politician happy.
That is terrifying. And which feeds perfectly into the fourth domino, bureaucratic risk.
Right.
It's not just the police being pressured, it's the civil servants.
Exactly.
I was reading this section, and what really struck me is how the local cadres exert this pressure. It's not polite lobbying.
Oh, no, not at all.
They will literally physically crowd a bureaucrat's office, threaten them with punitive job transfers to remote areas, or just hold up essential administrative signatures until the civil servant bends the rules for a party contractor.
Yeah, it's brute force.
And if bureaucrats aren't shielded from this physical and professional intimidation, they simply cannot run a lawful administration.
Right, and all of these structural failures ultimately lead to the fifth and final domino: political risk.
The one politicians actually care about?
Exactly. The paper warns that failure to curb these opportunistic cadres will result in a massive backlash in the upcoming Lok Sabha elections, the national parliament election.
Right.
Citizens won't judge the ruling party by its grand, sweeping speeches in the capital. They will judge the party purely by the primary experience of administration they feel in their own neighborhoods.
The source says something brutal here. If the new party's cadres act like the old ones, the political opposition won't even have to invent campaign stories. The unrestrained cadres will write the tragic script for them.
That's such a powerful point, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains why the new administration's reaction cannot simply be rhetorical.
Right.
You can't just go on television, put on a serious face, and say, "We condemn corruption." The reaction must be deeply institutional. Allowing a politically controlled police force and unrestrained cadres to run rampant doesn't just lose you votes, it completely destroys the social contract.
So we've diagnosed the disease, we've explored the symptoms, and we've seen how fatal it can be if left untreated.
Time for the cure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now we get to the mechanics of the cure. What is the actual step-by-step policy prescription in this document to dismantle a massive extortion empire?
Well, the paper lays out a very rigorous, citizen-centric, anti-extortion framework.
Okay, where does it start?
Step 1 starts at the absolute top with a public zero-tolerance declaration. The chief minister, the state party president, and the district leadership must all stand together and publicly announce that no party worker, no new recruit, and no local strongman is allowed to collect money, interfere in administration, or pressure businesses.
Okay, but talk is cheap, right? Anyone can hold a press conference. So the source backs it up with a technological mechanism.
Right.
They propose a state-level digital grievance portal and a dedicated helpline. Citizens, business owners, and transport operators can log in and report demands for protection money or threats made using the party's name.
And the crucial mechanism that makes this work: every single complaint generates a tracking number.
So it leaves a paper trail.
Exactly. It can't just disappear into a black hole or get secretly deleted by a corrupt local official.
Accountability is hardwired into the system from the moment the complaint is filed.
Exactly. But the author also recognizes that public portals aren't enough on their own, which introduces the third step: internal party vigilance.
Right, policing your own.
Yeah, the party itself has to establish secret observers at the local level to actively report if anyone is using the party's name to commit crimes.
That sounds a bit risky, though.
It is, and the text does caution that this internal vigilance must be strictly disciplined and reviewed at high levels so it doesn't devolve into a paranoid, reckless spy network.
Right, nobody wants a secret police situation inside their own ranks.
Definitely not.
They also suggest creating specialized industrial protection cells in key economic zones.
Yeah, IPCs.
Right. This allows business associations to submit confidential monthly reports about political pressure directly to top officials, bypassing the local data entirely.
Right.
But to fix that police risk we talked about earlier, where the local cops are in the pocket of the politicians, they propose a completely separate oversight system.
Yes, the source refers to this as a police of police, or POP system.
The police for the police.
Exactly. For politically sensitive complaints, you need a secondary force that does not report to the local precinct.
Makes sense.
If a local station constantly refuses to register complaints against party-connected individuals, the POP mechanism acts as an independent investigating body that answers only to the highest state authority. It ensures the local police are being watched by someone they cannot politically control.
So smart. Now, I have to highlight my absolute favorite detail in this entire policy framework.
Which one?
The source outlines a mechanism called the informer's informer validation system.
Ah, yeah.
When I first read this, my immediate thought was that it's like building a spam filter for your spam filter.
That's a great way to put it.
Why is this secondary verification process so vital to the whole operation?
Well, let's dig into why that first filter often fails.
Okay.
The author understands that anonymous grievance systems are highly vulnerable to manipulation. If you just blindly act on the very first anonymous tip you receive, that anti-extortion portal will immediately be weaponized by the public.
Because if I own a restaurant and I want to shut down my competitor across the street, all I have to do is call the anonymous hotline and falsely accuse them of running an extortion ring.
Precisely the danger. The system would be used to settle factional feuds within the party, aggressively attack business rivals, or simply execute personal revenge.
Right.
So, the informer's informer principle dictates that local informant reports must be rigorously cross-checked by independent observers, administrative sources, and district-level reviews.
You have to verify the verification.
Exactly, to ensure the grievance system itself doesn't just become a high-tech tool for a new kind of data-giri.
That structural failsafe makes total sense. And the paper doesn't just hand over this massive to-do list. It attaches a strict, highly aggressive timeline to force execution.
Oh yeah, they move fast.
Within the first 30 days, they have to launch the temporary helplines, officially identify the high-risk industrial zones, and make that zero-tolerance declaration loudly and publicly.
And following that, within 100 days, the full digital portal with those essential tracking numbers must be live.
Wow.
Yeah, they need to establish the district-level anti-extortion cells, begin transferring compromised police officers out of areas with repeated complaints, and publish the first public action report while protecting the identities of the complainants.
And finally, within 1 year, they need permanent anti-extortion authorities enshrined in place, annual public reports detailing the punishments handed out to their own members, and independent audits on government tenders and land approvals.
It is a massive institutional lift.
It really is. But as we transition into the final section of the text, the author makes a really profound point about human nature.
Yeah.
You can build all the digital portals, you can set up all the police of police systems and protection cells you want, but the root of the problem isn't digital or structural. It's human.
This raises an incredibly important question about the actual people running the machine on the ground. The document insists that all of these administrative changes must be paired with mandatory democratic training for party cadres.
I have to admit, I read that part and thought, is a PowerPoint presentation on democratic values really going to stop a local enforcer who is used to collecting thousands in protection money every week?
It sounds a bit weak at first glance.
Yeah, it feels a little naive to think a seminar will overcome financial greed.
It might seem naive on the surface, but the paper frames this training not as a polite moral seminar, but as establishing a firm organizational and legal boundary.
Okay, how so?
Well, many of these cadres have spent decades in a political culture where they were literally taught that winning an election makes them the local authority, that they are effectively informal officers of the state.
Right, the data.
Exactly. The training is meant to forcefully break that illusion.
So they have to explicitly teach them that just because their team won the election, it doesn't mean they own the neighborhood.
Yes.
It's about setting the rules of engagement so nobody can claim ignorance when they get arrested later.
That's it. The curriculum the paper suggests is very specific for that exact reason.
What's in it?
The cadres must be taught citizen sovereignty. They must be taught to respect opposition voters, to understand the strict ethical and legal boundaries of government funds, and most importantly, to respect police independence.
Wow.
The message isn't just be a nice neighbor. The message is joining the ruling party is no longer a shield from the law, and we will turn you in ourselves.
That is a total paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And the source has a stark warning about this exact dynamic. A party that doesn't train and discipline its workers after a massive victory is destined to be taken over by its absolute worst elements.
It's inevitable.
If you don't weed out the extortionists early, they eventually become the face of your government.
And that leads to the ultimate thesis of the source material. The text argues that the true test of a new administration isn't how loudly they condemn the old regime's corruption on television.
Because anyone can do that.
Right. It is how firmly and how publicly they are willing to punish their own people when they cross the line.
Think about what this means for you listening to this right now. Even if you don't live in West Bengal, even if you don't follow Indian politics closely, this deep dive is a masterclass in human organization and institutional reform.
Absolutely.
It shows us exactly how systemic corruption operates and how a toxic culture can effortlessly survive a change in leadership if the new bosses aren't paying close attention to the mechanics of the floor level.
The lessons here apply just as much to corporate boardrooms undergoing a massive merger as they do to state governments undergoing a transition of power.
Totally.
Changing the logo on the front door doesn't magically change the behavior in the hallways.
It doesn't.
It requires heavy, sustained, and often uncomfortable institutional effort to change organizational behavior. The party or the company that claims to represent the people should never be feared by the people.
It all circles back to that image we started with. The morning after the revolution. The confetti is still scattered on the ground, the new flags are flying in the wind, but the real work, the deeply unglamorous, highly technical work of building systems to stop human greed, is only just beginning.
The hard part starts on day one.
Exactly. And that leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up today. If political machines have historically relied on informal extortion and Tolabaji to financially sustain their massive grassroots operations, it raises a fascinating question for you to ponder. Can a truly clean political party ever financially compete in an ecosystem that was built entirely on dirty money? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.